Hi friends, this is Angelica. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be taking apart a garland that I bought last year and just reusing it in a different way. I'm also going to be packaging up what I made, and I'm going to use the bells from the garland to decorate my package. So we're going to start first with looking at the garland. Now, I found this at Hobby Lobby last year, probably a week and a half after Christmas. It was the Monday after Christmas when they put their whole Christmas, everything 90% off. And for some reason, my store was like still almost fully stocked with Christmas. So I went and I got a couple gift cards to Hobby Lobby for Christmas. So I was able to use my gift cards, and I just really loaded up on all Christmas DIY crafts and then just stuff like this. So this garland, I mean, it's not my favorite. I probably wouldn't buy this for my tree, but when I saw it and I saw that it was, $1.39, I splurged and I bought two of them, knowing that I was going to take them apart and figure out something else to do with them. I'm going to start first with priming. I'm using Pentart Bonding Primer. This is my go-to primer, especially when I'm using glass and now metal. This works great on metal. I did try to paint a metal snowflake with just regular acrylic paint, and I was able to just wipe it right off with a wet washcloth after it dried. So you're definitely going to need a primer if this is something that you want to do. So I went back, I primed all of the ornaments, and all the snowflakes, and I had 12 snowflakes. So with this primer, because it's like thin. It's almost like creamer. It has a little thickness to it, but you can't use a paintbrush to brush it onto metal or onto glass. You do need to dab it on. So I'm using the sponge dabber, and I did a full coat of the primer on front and back, let it dry, and then I added a coat of Debbie's DIY White Swan paint. And I really like this. It's a white paint, but it's really warm. It has like a hint of like a yellow to it. I don't know. It's beautiful. So that's what I'm using as the color that I want the snowflakes to be. Now my hands are going to get pretty dirty here, and the paint that I'm using right now just cleans right off with some soap and warm water. But what is left behind, which you'll see in a little bit, is the bonding primer that's still on my hand. So I should have used gloves. Lesson learned. If you do use the Pentart bonding primer, I highly recommend wearing gloves if you're going to be touching your project, like how I'm holding the ornaments in my hand. Now we are at the fun part. I love putting texture on my projects, and the snowflake, once the primer and the paint was dried, it was really flat and really boring. So I had a friend ask me what I thought of the Ranger Distress Crackle paste, and I had never even heard of it. So I ordered it, and I'm going to be using it here. Now, I did not know how this worked on metal, so I'm using a pretty heavy hand with my spatula and putting a lot on this ornament. I did not need to put on this much, but I had no idea. So, you only learn from practice. So I just spread it on like butter. And the texture of this paste is wonderful. It's super, super creamy and so easy to work with. So once I had it spread out, I used my blow dryer to speed up the drying process. I wanted to see if this is going to help with the cracks. I did not let one just dry by itself. I just used my blow dryer just to I had a lot to do, so I just wanted to speed up the process. So I used my blow dryer. I did not use my heat tool. I just did not want to know how it cracked on metal with a super, super hot heat tool. So that's why I used my blow dryer. So I'm going to do a second ornament or a second snowflake, and this time I am putting a pretty thin layer of the crackle on it because I could see some of the parts on the first snowflake, there were thin parts of the snowflake where, I was really frugal with the paste, and it still had beautiful fine crackle lines in that area. So I thought, let me just do one with just a really light layer of the Crackle. And it turned out beautiful. Now the opaque paste, the Crackle paste, and the white paint, they kind of blended together. So like in person, when I'm holding it in my hand and really looking at it, you can totally see the cracks. But if it was hanging on the tree, you probably won't be able to see the cracks. So I am using this blending brush. I used this blending brush a couple weeks ago on a project where I used my Debbie's Design Diaries DIY black wax. So I did rub this on a piece of paper just to see if the bristles was still, that they weren't dry, that there was still a little bit of wax on the bristles. And it smeared a little bit of black out. So I thought, let's just try. I don't want to put any wax, like dark pigment on this, on the snowflakes. But that quick dusting of the colored bristles really helped just emphasize the cracks on these snowflakes. So the Crackle is really pretty, and then the wax just really emphasized the Crackle. But I just wanted to add one more layer of texture to the snowflake. So I'm using Ranger's Multi-Medium Matte. I keep this adhesive on my desk at all times. You know, I usually use Liquitex Matte Medium or medium matte on my projects, but on my desk I always have the little Ranger bottle. So I put a little bit of the matte medium on the snowflakes, and I smoothed the adhesive out with my finger so it wasn't like lumpy. And then I sprinkled another Ranger product. This is the Distress Glitter Clear Rock Candy. My most favorite glitter. I use this on almost every Christmas project that I make. It's lovely. It's beautiful. It's clear. The matte medium dries to a clear, and it just makes it sparkle, and it's so lovely. Did I mention that it's lovely? I don't know how many times I just said lovely. Anyway, okay, so we're going to move on to a different style of snowflake. Now, when I was working, doing all those layers with the first batch of snowflakes, I thought I would try something different. And you see, I have my glove on. So I'm not going to stain my hand up like I did with the first round. So I have a sponge, a black sponge brush, and I'm dabbing on the bonding primer, but I'm doing it pretty messy. I'm not trying to cover all of the metal because I want this next snowflake project to be almost like peeled paint instead of the Crackle. So I like totally went left field with this. I had no idea how this was going to turn out, and you know, you don't learn if you don't try. So I did my first layer of the bonding primer just like that on both sides, very messy. And now I'm going to do a second layer in the same manner, but I'm not going to cover all the spaces that I did the first time, if that makes sense. I have this showing on screen, so I am making sure that I'm turning my brush every now and then, just so I'm not getting really sharp lines with the primer. So I went into my embossing powders drawer. I have a drawer full of embossing powders that I've had for years. I do not use them because I just pretty much heat emboss with a white embossing powder. But I do have this really cool embossing powder from Fawn. This is a textured embossing powder, so when it heats up, it's going to kind of bubble and just do really fun things. And I forgot that I had this. Actually, I had gone into my drawer to find some clear glitter embossing powder, and I saw this textured powder, and I thought, oh my gosh, this would be fabulous. So while the primer is still wet, I poured the embossing powder over the primer. And I am going to use my heat tool here to melt the textured embossing powder. And this is metal, so I'm only going to be able to do half now. And then I have to let the snowflake cool down for about a minute. And then I was able to do the other half. Now, if you're not into stamping or embossing powder is just little flakes of, I think it's plastic. I think they're just little flakes of plastic. But you would stamp something with sticky ink or anything that's wet And then you pour your embossing powder over the wet surface, and you use a super hot heat gun or heat tool, which is what I'm using here. And it is, yeah, it gets really, really hot. So you need to be careful with this heat tool. Definitely don't leave it out on your desk. Definitely don't let kids use it. But it melts it really good, and you can see the texture, the powder like bubbling up once it starts melting, and it just left behind this beautiful kind of snowy look to the snowflakes, which I was like, oh, this worked out so good. Like I said, I had no idea where I was going with the idea I had in my hand, but to find that texture embossing powder really made my day. So I'm going to do the glitter step again. I'm adding the matte medium, spreading it out with my gloved hand. I will say this was actually kind of hard. I don't know why I didn't think about taking my glove off here, because I used a lot more glue than I did with my finger, but you know, it is what it is. But I just used my finger to spread that glue out. And like I said before, it just helps the glitter lay flat on the snowflake. I didn't want there to be little bumps of glue with glitter stuck to it. I wanted the glitter just to give a sparkle to the snowflake. I wanted that, and that's it. No distractions, no dimension, nothing, just a sparkle. And it worked. I'm telling you, if you don't have this glitter in your collection and you like sparkle on your Christmas projects, especially paper, like I don't really use this on my ornaments, but on most of my Christmas paper projects, I use this glitter, and these jars last a long time. This is my third Christmas, I think, with this jar, and it's maybe half gone. So now we have the snowflakes done, and I'm going to wrap up 4 snowflakes for my dad. He wants 4 of every ornament that I make, so I wanted to just stick with the Ranger Tim Holtz distress theme that I have going on with these ornaments. Again, for those who aren't into paper crafting or card making, Tim Holtz is a product designer for Ranger. Well, I'm not really sure what their relationship is, but the distress line from Ranger is stamped with Tim Holtz's name, and he has a YouTube channel where he shows how to use his mediums, and oh my goodness, you want to get stuck down a rabbit hole, go to his channel. It's so amazing what he can do with his inks and all of his different mediums to use with his inks. So he also has a stamp line. He has red rubber stamps with Stampers Anonymous. Now, I'm not too familiar with his company. I only own stamps from their company with Tim Holtz, from the Tim Holtz collection. So this one is called Cozy Christmas, and it came out, I don't know, maybe last year or a couple years ago. And like most of my Tim Holtz stamps, I buy them and then I just cherish them, put them away and forget that I have them. But I did go through my Christmas stamps by him and saw this stamp set, and I thought, oh my goodness, those stamps would make the cutest wrapping paper. So I have a roll of craft wrapping paper that I had in my wrapping paper stash. So I cut out a piece to fit the box that the ornaments are in, and I'm using 2 stamping presses from Fiskars to stamp the 2 stamps that were in this stamp set onto the wrapping paper. This first stamp press that I'm using, I actually bought this when I bought my first stamp set 6 years ago when I started stamping. I got it at Joann's. I used a coupon, so I was able to get it pretty inexpensive. And then I've bought a few more since then. Just if I see one on sale, I'll grab one. I just think that they're wonderful to have in your stash, especially if you're a stamper. I have a stamping platform, a Misty. I have a couple Misties, and they're great. But for projects like this, you need to have a press or a large acrylic block to put your stamp on, but I like the press so much because you have full control of pushing it down and it not moving, whereas if I'm holding an acrylic block to stamp, I tend to shift a little bit and then the ink gets fuzzy because it moves a little bit, and you don't get a crisp stamped image like the press is giving here on this wrapping paper. And I just think that this wrapping paper turned out so lovely with this black on craft look. The black ink that I'm using is my favorite ink in all of my ink collection. I have a huge ink collection, but this VersaFine Clair Nocturne black ink is the best black ink that I have found. I started using this 2 or 3 years ago. And I mean, game over. This ink is amazing. It is a pigment ink, so it does sit on top of the paper instead of a dye ink, which absorbs into the paper, if that makes sense. So a dye ink impression isn't going to be as crisp as a pigment ink impression. So that's why, I just feel like if I try to do this with any dye ink, it would not turn out as clear and as perfect as the VersaFine Clair. Now, since it is a pigment ink, it needs time to dry because it's sitting on top of that paper. So I am going to put the wrapping paper aside and move on to making a tag. Now, I have lots of tag dies in my die collection, but I just wanted to keep this project as simple as possible. So I bought these tags in the gift department at Target a couple years ago, and they've just been sitting in a drawer. So I pulled them out and took the string that was on it and took that off. And now I'm using Distress ink. This is another Tim Holtz line. This is from his ink line, and I believe I'm using walnut stain and an ink sponge to blend that ink out, just to give this tag a distressed or an aged look. Now the tag is a little lighter than the wrapping paper, which is why I wanted to just age it a little bit with the ink. And I'm going to pick a sentiment from that same stamp set to stamp on the tag. And I normally would stamp a sentiment in the middle of the tag, or just, I would put something in the middle of the tag, but I knew that I was going to tuck that tag in under the bells. So I kept the sentiment towards the bottom of the tag, and I did the sentiment here. And then off screen, I decided just to use one of those stamps that I used on the wrapping paper, like just a little portion of that stamp I put on a branch, just to add a little bit more interest to the tag, so it wasn't just, a small sentiment at the bottom of the tag. After I wrapped the present, I did make sure that the ink was dry. I rubbed one of the edges back and forth real quick over my finger over the image, just to make sure that the ink wouldn't smudge. It did not. So I wrapped up the box, and then I wrapped twine around the box. I threaded the twine through the bells, and now I'm just going to tie a little bow. I did take a quick break here because I didn't know if I wanted to attach the tag with the twine, and I decided I did not. So I'm going to do a bow here, trim off the last of the twine, and then for the tag, since I didn't tie it to the package, I'm just going to add a little sticky dot on the back of the tag, and then that's going to keep the tag in place on the package. Sticky dots, that's another thing that I have in my drawer. I use all the time. They are wonderful and really convenient instead of using double-sided tape. You can see the branch that I stamped on that tag, and like I said, it just really added interest to the tag instead of it just being that simple sentiment towards the bottom. So I'm going to add that sticky dot, slide that tag back into place under the bells, and that is going to finish the package and this video. So I am so in love with how this package turned out. Those bells are amazing. The distress on them, perfect. I didn't have to do anything to them other than cut them off of the garland. I am loving the layers of texture on the snowflakes, the crackle paste, amazing. I loved working with it. Can't wait to get my hands dirty with it again. And the Lawn Fawn embossing powder, fabulous. I am so glad that I found it and was able to use it. So that is going to finish today's video. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. And be sure to subscribe before you leave. I will be back shortly with another video. So I'll see you then. Take care, friends.